The Church of Almighty God is not a cult. Okay, how do I know this? Because the words that are distributed by the Church of Almighty God in The Word Appears in the Flesh, Volume 1 through 7, I know those words are the words of God. How do I know they're the words of God? Well, how do you know that Jesus' words are the words of God? I'll tell you how I know. It's because Jesus was able to overcome sin through his forgiveness of sin. And that's how I know Jesus was God, because he was able to forgive sin. Only God can overcome sin, whether overcoming sin through the Ten Commandments in the age of law or through the forgiveness of Christ in his sacrifice on the cross, or Almighty God's words. Almighty God's words bring about change. Like, I'm changed like 98%. The only sins that I have are cigarettes and porn addiction. That's it. I don't have arrogance. I don't have selfishness. I don't have greediness. I don't have promiscuousness. I don't chase women, fame, wealth. I don't live for those things. I don't live for a crown, a reward, for blessings. I have the intention to serve God. I have the intention to contribute to mankind. I just pray for God's will to be done. I don't complain against God. I have a testimony similar to Job, who was a perfect and upright man. So I'm 98% free of sin. How in the world could a man be 98% free of sin? Well, Almighty God's words bring change. Almighty God's words are able to overcome sin. And that's how I know that Almighty God is the same God as Jesus, who is the same God as Yahweh, Jehovah in the Old Testament. They're all three of these beings are one God. And I know that for a fact because I've experienced it. So just want to make that very clear. And by the way, don't judge the church by the people. 99% of the people in the church are still very corrupt and have not changed. And that's their fault, not God's fault. So don't judge the church by the people. Discern the essence of God's words. Understand that they are God's words. By understanding they bring about change. And you can experience this by reading them for yourself. You know, the people are flawed, but God's words are perfect. And you'll understand that after you read them. And you can read them by downloading the Church of Almighty God app. You don't necessarily have to join the church. You can join the church if you want to, but understand that if you join the church, the fellowship groups just kind of talk about the same things over and over. If you want new light and new enlightenment and new revelations, you have to read God's words on your own. You can't rely on the fellowship groups because the fellowship groups usually stay at the beginner stage. And that's because most of the people in the Church of Almighty God are at the beginner stage, unfortunately. But if you want, to get into the advanced stage of actual change, you have to read God's words for yourself, And every volume brings newer and higher revelation and enlightenment than the previous volume. So, for example, Volume 2 brings newer and higher revelation than Volume 1. Volume 3 brings newer and higher revelation than Volume 2, and so on and so forth. So if you want to skip straight ahead and get to the really advanced stuff, you can just go straight to Volume 7 and start reading there. And then you can kind of go backwards and start reading like 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You can do it that way if you want. However you want to do it. I started out reading kind of all over the place. When I started, there was only Volume 1. And I would just search random things up in Volume 1 or just click on random chapters that looked interesting, and I would read it that way. So I didn't read it in order from the first chapter to the last chapter. I read it like just however I wanted. And now I've read The Word Appears in the Flesh, Volume 1, probably close to 4 times over now. And just to give you an idea of the size of this book. So here it is. The Word Appears in the Flesh, Volume 1. Look at that. That's a lot. A lot. Much more than the Bible. Oh. There was a little spider on there. A little baby spider. I just blew it away because I don't want to kill it, because I don't like killing God's creatures. If I don't have to. I mean, if I have to, I will, but I don't want to do it if I don't have to. So anyways, the church is not a cult. The church is not a criminal organization. The church is not violent. The church is not promiscuous. The church is very strict when it comes to relations between men and women. So you have to understand the principles of the church are very high, higher than the principles of Age of Grace churches. And if you held Age of Grace churches to the same standard, did you hold the Church of Almighty God when you call it a cult? Well, then Age of Grace churches could be classified as cults very easily, because the Church of Almighty God has higher principles than churches, just regular old churches, Age of Grace churches. So, just wanted to put that out there. I hope this helps somebody understand the reality of what's going on with the church. And, in summary, the people are flawed. God's words are perfect, but the church is not a cult. So, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. May God's will be done in all of your lives. God bless and goodbye.